Hello and welcome to the World Wanderers podcast episode number 28. I'm Ryan and I'm going to be solo hosting this episode because it is another interview. My friend Mikael came on to talk about WWOOFing and some of his other experiences traveling. And unfortunately, the high-tech, super advanced studios of the World Wanderers podcast only has 2 microphones. So Amanda had to miss out this week, but don't you fret, she'll be back next week. Anyways, Mikael and I touched on a whole bunch of stuff and had a really fun, enjoyable conversation that I think you'll really enjoy listening to. We talked about WWOOFing, some of his experiences traveling, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So enough of me talking and on to the interview. Thanks for listening. Okay, first of all, thanks for coming on the podcast, Mikael.
Yeah, no problem, Ryan. Glad to be here.
Glad you're here. So we're going to be talking about WWOOFing today.
WWOOFing.
WWOOFing.
WWOOFing. Okay.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it.
There's many pronunciations. Yeah.
So WWOOFing is an organization that hooks up farmers with like transient slave labor.
Yeah, free labor essentially. So it's kind of, it benefits both parties. For travelers, it gives them a free place to stay and usually provides meals and other kind of necessities to live. And in exchange, the farmer usually asks you to work several hours a day doing whatever they need to do on the farm, which I think varies highly between what farm you're on and what they do at the farm.
So there isn't a standard amount of hours? Because I thought
it's all contextual, based on the farm. Depends on what their standards are, who they are, what type of work they have to do. Some, demand more work from you, and probably harder work than others too.
Yeah, so it depend on the mindset of the farmer, I guess, right? Like if they exactly. Or they want labor out of it, or if they want like labor plus meet people and have experiences like that. Yeah.
I think usually, I don't have too much experience, but I think usually the types of farmers that participate in WWOOFing in the first place are usually the more open-minded types who partially want it for the extra labor, but also partially want it just to kind of create a cool sense of community and meet lots of new cool people.
Yeah. I remember the first time I heard about WWOOFing was when I was in New Zealand. And we met a few people there who had WWOOFed. I guess WWOOFing around New Zealand's a pretty popular thing to do.
Yeah.
But some of them, like, you'd go to the farm, they'd work like 4 hours a day. It was super nice. They had amazing meals. And like the people would actually like take them out and tour them around in the afternoon too.
Oh, really?
Like sights and attractions and.
Yeah, totally. It's a sharing, I guess, between, often anyways, I've heard between the two parties, between the farmers and the people working there. The people working bring their stories and bring their kind of personalities in exchange. The farmers, often usually gladly show them around, tell them about the culture of the place, give them insight on to the place they are, and often will teach you a lot about what they're doing and, exchange of knowledge kind of. And stories.
So I was looking at the website today, and I didn't really think about the fact that you'd be learning a lot of cool farming stuff.
Yeah, that's actually, when I WWOOFed in Portugal, there was a few people who were really interested in organic farming, and they had been traveling all over Europe, going to different types of organic farms, that interested them. And essentially just, they're also getting the room and board and for free in exchange for their work, but it's more they're exchanging their work almost for the knowledge that the farmers would teach them about how they were growing certain things, or how they manage an organic farm, or how to do that same thing themselves one day, kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of like an internship almost.
Exactly, yeah, almost like an internship.
So your experience WWOOFing was in Portugal a few years ago, right?
Yeah, exactly. 2 different places, but one place I only stayed briefly, and the second place I stayed for almost a month and a half. It was in kind of in the north of Portugal, like middle north, east of Lisbon, in the mountain ranges there. I forget actually what the mountains are called. But it was near a town called Fundão. That's what I remember.
Okay. What kind of farm was it?
So they were actually it's pretty eclectic. It was basically, is a Dutch guy who had married this English woman, and they had done a lot of traveling themselves and lived kind of an eclectic alternative lifestyle for a long time.
What does alternative lifestyle mean?
I don't know, just like doing random things all over the place, like not standard 9 to 5
not
jobs
in the box.
Exactly. Until they decided they want to get into farming. And I think at the time, and still actually when I was in Portugal, land was quite cheap. Sort of a lot of dilapidated farms and good farming land all over the place that you could buy for fairly cheap. And there wasn't too much regulations, I guess, on foreigners coming in necessarily. So they ended up buying a farm in Portugal, and it was it was organic, but it was more of a subsistence farm. So they weren't necessarily growing things to sell and make a living. They were growing things for their own use and trying to use as much as possible of what they grew just to live off of. But they would sell the occasional things in like the local markets and stuff, but that wasn't a huge source of income for them.
Yeah. And what was the day-to-day like while you were there?
It varied actually a huge amount. There's always kind of like a big assortment of different jobs. I remember the farmhouse they were living in was kind of this dilapidated old stone framed house, and there was only half of it was almost completely in ruins, and the other half had a few different rooms in it, and that's where they lived. But when I was there, they literally just had the basic necessities. They had one tap with running water and like 2 light bulbs, I think, in the whole place. And like there's no like real flooring or anything. It was a lot of gravel and dirt, and it's pretty like super, super rustic.
Yeah.
So a lot of the days actually we were doing some renovation. We were building stone walls and actually renovating the old dilapidated part of the house. They also were building a new kind of little concrete house beside the main farm building. So did a lot of work on that. And then, worked harvesting various things at certain points. Spent the mornings often going into the bush a bit and collecting. I forgot what type of plant it was, but just bunches of these plants that grew like crazy in the wild there for the goats. So I just go in the morning and collect huge bunches of the stuff and then feed it to the goats, and that's kind of my morning duties. And everything from house renovations to milking goats to getting goat feed to planting potatoes. We did that, I remember.
How long were you there for?
About a month and a half.
Oh, wow. Is it pretty common that people stay that long at one spot, or is it more like hopping around?
It can be, yeah, for sure. It depends. Depends the nature of why the person's there. So there's a lot of people who are just travelers, and they're not necessarily there to learn that much, but they're sort of for the experience to be in a kind of isolated and more remote place and learning about the culture and stuff. But they usually just stay there for maybe a few weeks and just use it as a place to get free room and board before they go on to their next destination, sort of. But then there's also people who I met in Portugal who had been doing this, like WWOOFing, for 1 to 2 years, and they would spend, since they had such a long timeline, they would spend often like a few months if they found a good place at a different farm.
Yeah. Did they usually have a minimum time frame? Like you have to stay a week or something?
And that's completely depends on the farm. Yeah. The one that I was at was 2 weeks, I think was the minimum.
Okay.
And that's just because, like, if you stay less long than that, it's hard for them to teach you enough that you'll be actually a valuable worker if you stay less than 2 weeks.
Yeah, like spend like 3 days teaching you and then you like work a day and leave or something.
Exactly. Which people usually or sometimes do too. Like they'll show up and
I guess, yeah, there's
they
nothing
might not
binding.
like the people or I don't know, they decide spontaneously they want to go somewhere else. So they'll leave after a few days. But yeah, it's definitely not encouraged.
Yeah. So we were talking before about how WWOOF or WWOOF is actually like, it's not really one gigantic organization, but like a whole bunch of sub organizations. So if someone was looking to like get or looking at woofing opportunities somewhere, they actually have to go to the country they want, register, like pay the fee, and then do that in the country, which I guess might be a pain if you like wanted to travel around Europe woofing, because you'd have to buy like 7 different memberships or something.
Yeah, exactly. That's I thought about that myself too. It is kind of a pain. And maybe that's why people sometimes stay longer at certain spots, because you have to pay membership to each country's woofing organization, which I forget how much it was for me. I think it was around like $40.
Okay, so not
So it wasn't
overly
like
significant.
outrageous, yeah. And that's like an annual membership too. Or maybe it wasn't even annual. Maybe it was lifetime. I forget the details. Either way, yeah, it's not huge, but it still adds up if you're going between countries like week after week sort of thing, and you want to do woofing the entire way.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So how did you end up, like what made you want, first, how did you hear about woofing, I guess, is the first question.
I forget actually. I'd heard about it quite a while ago. Like I think when I was in high school, just through my brother. Or I forget exactly, but it was kind of at the back of my mind. I knew that like it existed and it was a possibility. I never really looked into the logistics of it. And funny enough, I was traveling through Spain and Portugal. Initially Spain with a friend, and then he ended up leaving me in southern Spain, and I was just kind of on my own. I didn't have much money, and that summer I couldn't find a job, so I just decided to sort of bum around with the minimal money I had. And so it's kind of going from place to place, and then all of a sudden I made my way to southern Portugal in the Algarve. And
oh yeah, like Lagos or?
Yeah, Lagos, exactly.
I love Lagos. Yeah.
And so I was just sitting in a hostel in Lagos, and then WWOOFing came back to me. I was like, hey, like, why don't I try WWOOFing? And at that point I had no idea. It was like how WWOOFing exactly worked and the technicalities of it. If Portugal even participated in WWOOFing and there would be any options. And I just looked up on the internet, saw there was tons and tons of farms, some of them really cool looking in Portugal, and kind of went from there.
So what drew you to the one you ended up picking?
That's a good question. Actually, I forget exactly. But I think they seemed more organized than some of the other ones that I looked at. They actually had a website for their farm, and I guess had a really good description of what they were like, what the atmosphere was like there. I guess kind of what your day-to-day routines would be. And whereas a lot of them won't give necessarily that much description sometimes. You kind of have to pick and choose. And yeah, it seemed like a cool area of Portugal too. I was kind of had this idea to hitchhike through Portugal in different areas and just sort of discover places along the way. And this farm was located in the north, whereas I was in the south, so it seemed like a good destination kind of thing. So yeah, I picked there and then spent the next like 2 weeks or something just hitchhiking to there, knowing that I'd get there and like that would be my destination for the next month or so.
I was hitchhiking through Portugal.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
It's really, really cool. Huge success too. It's the thing with hitchhiking, you never know how people in certain countries how responsive they'll be to it. Because some places I've heard kind of look down upon hitchhikers, pretty much thinking that like, hey, this guy can't even get his own ride. Like, why doesn't he like get a job and
what a bum.
Yeah, what a bum, exactly. And I've heard that's the case kind of in Spain and I don't know, different parts of the world, but Portugal, I didn't know anything about it beforehand, but I ended up being super responsive and met some amazing people. And funny enough, I also didn't know, but Portuguese love Canadians too. So almost every single person was so enthusiastic that I was Canadian. It's like,
really?
All right. Like,
you didn't speak any Portuguese at all?
No. And that was the other thing I was kind of concerned about too. Which in the end, like, luckily enough, apparently Portuguese often speak English. A good majority of them speak a tiny bit of English. It seemed like anyways. So I had no trouble with that. It was an amazing experience. It led to a lot of sort of crazy side adventures that I didn't plan for at all.
Yeah. Anything you want to elaborate on?
So I guess, for instance, one time I was just sort of sitting on the side of the road. I'd hitchhiked to some spot, didn't really know where I was exactly. I knew I was on the kind of right road to where I wanted to go eventually. And I was just sitting having lunch on a bench, and some dude pulled by, saw me on the side, I guess, with my backpack, and like clearly knew I was just a traveler. And like he goes by, I see his car go by, then he stops like 50 meters away from me, reverses and like undoes his window and just sticks his head out. He's like, "Yo, man," starts speaking English too, which was kind of the funny thing. Somehow I knew I was a traveler and I spoke English.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yo, man, you want to go to an Islamic festival?" And I was like, "Oh, what? Like an Islamic festival? What's that?" He's like, "Oh, it's just like, it's a festival, like celebrating Islamic culture, I guess. Like it's really sweet, lots of good music, really crazy. And it's taking place in this like little remote part in this tiny, medieval, Islamic town actually in Portugal."
Oh, yeah. Cause I guess I always forgot that like, the Muslims kind of came up into Spain and Portugal and really were like running shit there for a while.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of another story, but Portugal is really, really interesting that way. It has it's just so much history there. And a huge historical influence was the Moors, and the Islamic culture that came with that.
So the Moors are the Islamic folks?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember going,
I don't know exactly this.
We went to Cordoba and in Spain, and they have this like big cathedral now, but it was like originally a mosque. Or it might have been a cathedral that got turned into a mosque that's got turned back into a cathedral. So it's got this like weird like Gothic vibe mixed with like this Muslim thing as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting because you don't sort of expect it. All those cultures to sort of.
Yeah, I remember learning about it in grade 12 about how like during the Dark Ages in Europe, Islamic culture was really like way ahead. Like they had scientific and so much science going on. Like Baghdad was kind of like the center of the world scientifically.
Yeah.
Like all sorts of stuff going on there. And they had like lights and all this other crazy stuff. And then just somehow something went wrong and got turned backwards.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a history I really got to read into more.
Yeah.
Interesting to learn about.
How long were you in Lagos for?
I was in Lagos just for 2 nights.
Okay. What hostel did you stay at? That's the funny thing
with Lagos too. Like I mentioned now to friends I have who go traveling in Portugal and stuff, and I mentioned them like, "Yeah, you should go to Lagos. It's pretty sweet." And they're like, "Yeah, of course. Like, of course we're going to Lagos.
Obviously.
Like, it's the best place to like party in Portugal or whatever." But when I was going through Portugal, I literally knew nothing about the country. Had no idea what Lagos was, where it was, or like.
What year were you there in?
Would have been 2012.
Okay.
Forget exactly. But yeah, the way I arrived in Lagos, like I was in Faro, which is a bigger town near to the Spanish border in the south. And I was originally going to look for a hostel there, but everywhere I actually looked was all booked up. So I ended up just taking this little local Portuguese train that like went along the coast, connecting all the small towns along the coast, and just took it to the end of the line pretty much. And the end of the line was Lagos. And I still knew nothing about the place or what it was. So, and the kind of train arrives on like the outskirts too. So
like across, there's like that canal or whatever that kind of cuts to the town.
Exactly. You probably remember better. Have you been?
Yeah. We went in 2011.
Oh, sweet.
Stayed for quite a while. At like, you're the Rising Cock Hostel?
No, I was at, what's it called? I forget now.
I stayed at one called Gold Coast too. That was also
I
really
think
good.
it was Gold Coast actually where I was at.
Yeah.
Was it kind of like a thin place that went upstairs?
Yeah, pretty like nice and modern.
Yeah. Had a kind of a terrace at the top.
Yeah.
A patio at the top.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, it was really funny. We went into like Rising Cock, which is like this small, like apparently it's like the best party hostel in Europe or something.
Oh, really?
So it's just like fucking insanity. It was like 2 days of madness, and then we went over to Gold Coast, which is kind of like nice in a different way, like a bit like physically nicer, but more of a relaxed vibe at the same time.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but I remember like there was this chicken piri piri place in Lagos that was just like
the Portuguese are all about
so
their
amazing. Yeah,
it's really, really good there. Yeah. Anyway, so I got into Lagos, knew nothing about it, and was at this point kind of stressed because it was pretty late. I forgot what time, but it was well after dark, and I didn't know where I was going to sleep, and I didn't know whether this town like even had a hostel. Like for all I knew, it was just this little traditional Portuguese town where nobody spoke English. But sure enough, like I walk in and I get near the center, and before I even like had a chance to look around this place, some guy calls out to me in an English accent. He's like, "Yo, man, sorry, my English accent is terrible. I can't actually do it."
Your Portuguese doing English kind of sounds like, I don't know, like some black guy or something. Like, yo, man.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Sorry, back to your story.
Yeah, he just calls out to me like, "Yo, man, you looking for a hostel?" And I'm like, "What the fuck? Really?" He's like, "Yeah, I am looking for a hostel." He's like, "All right, just follow me." And he literally like, not much conversation except for that. Like he kind of asked me like where I'm coming from afterwards and what my name was and everything. But he just leads me to this hostel, which is the one that you were mentioning before, which was like €8 a night. It's super cheap, included like this amazing breakfast and everything. And like, holy crap, how did this happen? And sure enough, I figured out that Lagos is this huge party town, and get upstairs in this hostel, and like first thing there's this huge crowd of like 20 people, just like playing drinking games and everything. And like I just walk in, they all turn their head to me and they're like, "Hey, get in here, have a beer."
Yeah.
And then kind of went from there.
It's such a cool thing when you go, like it seems like in Lagos there's a lot of like really inclusive hostels where it's like people like go there and they're like there to party and have a good time. And then, so like, it's like everyone in the hostel kind of expects everyone else to just hang out with each other versus like some hostels you go to and it's kind of like everyone just like doing their own thing.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's actually really true. And that was actually probably the first time I experienced a hostel like that inclusive. Like literally everybody who was staying there knew each other well and was like partying together every night. And so it's just like a big community, a big family of people.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
And I guess that like the like more of a community family feel in like a hostel like that is kind of also like one of the big benefits of WWOOFing is like you get more of like a community, a close-knit feel and actually get to know some people.
Totally.
And build some relationships.
Totally. Yeah, I met a lot of really cool people WWOOFing.
Was it pretty like, were there quite a few other people?
Yeah, so the place I was at, when I started, actually, there was only one other person. And it was this English guy who owned a pub somewhere in the country in England. He was a really, really nice guy, but he had some problems at some point. And anyways, he was kind of using this vacation as just to relax and get his head back on his shoulders sort of thing. But he is in the end there for like 2 months too. He was there for quite a while. And progressively, over my month and a half there, they're just came more and more people. And by the end, I think there was like 20 of us, maybe.
Whoa.
There's a lot. Yeah.
That seems, is that pretty big?
People. Sorry?
Is that pretty big for a WWOOFing thing? I think the one I was looking at this morning had like 3 people.
Yeah.
The chase for 3 people or something.
Yeah, no, I think that's quite big actually. And partly actually what they also did for money there, they held these little courses, I guess, on organic farming. So they offered people they could come down to their farm and they teach them about sustainable agriculture and different things about permaculture and I forget exactly what. So there's a certain point where one of these little courses was happening. So there's quite a few people who came down for that. And they were also kind of WWOOFing at the same time, but also participating in this course. So I think that's why there were so many people by the end.
Yeah.
Usually there wouldn't be 20 people is probably a lot of people to manage and a lot of people to feed unless it's a really large scale farm, right?
Yeah, there'd be some, because do you get 3 meals a day when you're WWOOFing? I guess it depends.
Yeah, 3 meals a day. And that was the super lucky thing with this place and the reason I stayed so long too in the end. But the meals were incredible. She is such a good cook and all of it was fresh from their garden or fresh from the local market.
Yeah.
Fresh goat's milk in the morning from the goats they had. Also fresh goat's cheese from their goats and during the evening and for lunch. And there's always like really, really good food. I mean, I'm not picky with food too, so for me it was all amazing. But
that's really cool. I really I've never been able to try raw milk in my life.
No,
I never had a chance to. And I hear so many good things about it, but I need to try that.
Totally,
I'd really love to in the future own a little piece of land where I've got a cow that I can milk and chickens that I can eat the eggs from, and you've got a little thing where you've got some stuff growing, and then move that over, the cow eats the grass there, fertilize the land, kind of just a sustainable little farm where you can grow your own food.
Totally, yeah, no, same here. It's kind of been on my mind, and I've actually thought about maybe in the next few years going WWOOFing for a year or 2 at a time, just to kind of apprentice at different places and learn how to do it, see how other people are doing it. And,
it's funny because people get caught up in money essentially is this abstraction of value that you can use to support yourself. Mm-hmm. So people think about farming as you can't really make much money farming, except the whole point of making money in the first place is to make food, which you can kind of just circumvent that whole system if you can create a sustainable farm for yourself.
Oh yeah, totally. I guess the other problem is there's some other expenses sometimes depending on what you, but I don't know, for the most part. And that's what, there's a lot of people trying to do that sort of thing these days. Self-subsistence farming.
Yeah.
Growing their own food and somehow getting their own power too, and just learning how to be completely self-subsistent. Yeah.
Do you think that's a trend that's going on? Is a widespread trend, or is that just because we're kind of isolated here in the mountains and there's a bunch of hippies and people like that?
No, yeah. I mean, definitely in Canmore, there's, I guess, kind of that type of minded people. But also, I mean, there's nobody here trying to run self-subsistence farms just because the growing season is so short. But no, mainly actually from my time traveling and my time WWOOFing and the people I met there, I realized, how many types of these people there are in the world. In Portugal, just itself, it's astounding how many different farms offer WWOOFing opportunities. And I think a lot of those aren't the traditional Portuguese farmers. A lot of those are foreigners who came in who are running their own little organic farms or self-subsistence farms.
Because I guess it's
a pretty big community, I think.
Yeah, most of traditional farmers aren't super big into the sustainable organic thing.
No,
right? So it's I guess you get more of a younger farming crowd.
That's what I mean, exactly. I think it would probably be rare that, for instance, maybe we shouldn't generalize, but a traditional Portuguese farmer who's been doing working his land for years and years is going to be in tune enough, I guess, with popular culture to know about WWOOFing, first of all, let alone think it's a good idea to like participate in it. So
Yeah.
because for them, I mean, woofing is like, it's not, I think the farmer often is losing out more than the travelers because, you don't get, or at least often you don't get any like trained people. Like you have to teach them a lot of things. And usually they're travelers or people on vacation. Like they're not necessarily the best workers either too, right? So,
but I think it like may not necessarily be the best workers, but like at least you have people who are actually interested versus like if they were trying to find a full-time employee. I think a lot of places,
for
like
sure.
especially here in Canada, like if you're running a farm and trying to find, like running like an organic farm and trying to find like a full-time employee, that's got to be a pretty hard thing to do.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, so maybe it is to their benefit in the end. I think it really depends on, yeah, again, what type of farm they're. So I think you have one of your questions there is, have you heard of any bad experiences
Yeah.
working on farms? And yeah, from the people I met at the farm I was working at, I heard quite a few bad stories where, and this kind of ties into what I was saying before, where kind of the farmer was, it seemed like, and he was more exploiting their labor than anything. Usually, sometimes I'd hear like they'd be pretty disorganized. The food they'd provide try and get into that, I think it would be a really cool idea to just go woofing for a year.
Yeah.
And spend a good amount of time at each place I go to, and just learn different techniques and sort of learn the business a bit. How to grow things, but mainly like how do they keep it running for themselves, like the organization of it, what you need to do to like actually subsist or make an organic farm work.
Yeah. So would you have any locations you want to go in specific, or like you kind of?
Yeah, and I actually haven't thought about it too much detail. I would actually really like to go back to Portugal at some point. The beautiful thing about Portugal and is that it has extremely fertile land. Like, it's such an amazing country, actually. They have so much there, and the soil is so rich. You can, in a lot of places, you almost grow anything. It's just such a rich country.
It's funny, like when you go places like that, it really makes you think about how like Canada is kind of a pretty shitty place to live. From like a farming, growing foods point of view. Like Amanda and I went to Jamaica, and like there's like literally like everything growing there all over the place. Like you're walking around like, oh yeah, coffee, mangoes, bananas, breadfruit, coconut. Like this is all within like 5 steps of like every single tree is like something. You can grow the whole produce section in your backyard effectively.
Yeah, totally.
And like somewhere like Portugal.
When I was in Ghana too, like you go to the markets there, and for some reason I thought, because it's like the country's so far away and so exotic compared to Canada, that like they wouldn't have the same sort of vegetables, but like they had everything we have in Canada plus like all these other crazy exotic things that I had no idea existed too. So yeah, you can grow anything there too.
It's cool. Like, and I was looking at the WWOOFing website this morning, and like it is like completely worldwide. Like all over the place in South America, Central America.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing. You can literally almost go anywhere in the world, and there'll be somewhere. Again, I don't know how well organized those places will be, and how good of experience it will necessarily be, but yeah, you can go anywhere in the world almost.
Yeah, I guess because it's like the network isn't actually doing any like monitoring of how good the places are. You kind of just have to do the legwork on your own.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. And I imagine, though, I'm not sure, like some of these third world countries, probably the local organization will maybe be a bit less organized.
Yeah, and I guess even like a third world country, when labor is so cheap, bringing in foreigners kind of makes less sense economically.
Yeah, that's probably true too. But yeah, I don't know. That's something I can't really comment on, actually. I haven't even talked to somebody who like woofed in South America or Africa or that kind of thing. But I know it is a possibility. There are people who do it for sure.
Yeah, I guess I think like when I've thought about working places for accommodation, like it obviously makes more sense economically the more expensive a country is. So like when we were in Ecuador, for example, we met a guy who was like working for room and board at a hostel there. And the hostel cost, I think, like $5 American a night. And he was working like 6 hours a day or something. And it's like, this doesn't really make sense here. But like if you can work for room and board in Europe, or like WWOOF in Europe, you're actually you're saving a ton of money. Because Europe's a pretty expensive place to backpack.
It is, yeah. Portugal's a bit cheaper than other places, but it's still, depending on how much money you have, and you'll still drain your money pretty quickly. Yeah.
And I think that's probably why it's so big in like places like New Zealand and Australia, because it is quite expensive to live there, and you can find better farming opportunities. For sure. Anyways, well, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hey, no problem, Ryan.
And talking about woofing. Hopefully we can have you on again to talk about, I don't know, Switzerland or Ghana or something else crazy like that.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks for listening to the episode. If you enjoyed it or have any feedback of any kind, as always, please let us know by leaving a comment in the show notes on theworldwanderers.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.